What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at talklouder_podcast, and of course our website, talklouderpodcast.com. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host Jason McMaster.
Before you start talking about our guest today, I want to talk about the epic fucking weekend that was happening in Texas. We had Bay Area Strikes Back come through, which I saw photos of you and Dash hanging out with Dave Lombardo. I know that show was incredible at Emo's here in Austin.
Yes.
Hell's Heroes in Houston was happening all weekend. Started as early as like Thursday night, I think, with anyone and everyone in Underground, from Dark Angel to Candlemass to the new version of Riot, blah, 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 blah. My band Igniter was in San Antonio supporting Riot on Friday before they played Hell's Heroes on Saturday. I had to miss Hell's Heroes because of Texas Metal Legion South Texas Legion was down there playing, and I had to bow out because I was opening for Riot in San Antonio the same day, blah, blah, blah. It was just crazy, crazy weekend. Tell me about I feel like I'm missing something. You went to Bay Area Strikes Back. Wasn't there another show that you went to this weekend?
No. Okay. I think that was it. Okay. Bay Area, it was called Bay Strikes Back Tour. It was Testament, Exodus, and Death Angel at Emo's here in Austin. And I mean, you're right. There was a lot of metal going on in Texas over the past 3 or 4 days. Every city had some major.
I want to say Texas was kind of winning the heavy metal heat this past weekend here.
As
we look at the last week of April.
Yeah, I mean, you just couldn't be everywhere at once, and there was a lot of good stuff all going on. I stayed home here in Austin and took my son to see Testament, Exodus, and that
Death was Angel. Thursday, right?
Yes, correct. Thursday, that was Thursday. Right. It was. Had a great time. I got to give a shout to Felix Griffin. Felix was,
who we fucking need to get on this podcast.
Yeah,
just his story is incredible.
Felix, of course, the drummer for DRI for a number of years, and lives here in the area. He was kind of my running buddy that day, the night of the gig, and he was doing his darndest to get us to in front of Dave Lombardo, and finally he had to go home because he had to be at work at 6 a.m. or something ridiculous. So me and Dash just kind of stayed on our own and lingered, and eventually we got the prize. We did get to meet Dave Lombardo. Dash got his South of Heaven, or rather his Rain and Blood vinyl signed. Yeah. I got my Seasons in the Abyss. Dave came off the bus and there was about 15 people there. And he said, "All right, folks, just one item, please." And I wanted to respect that. So I'm having this agonizing decision. Which one of my albums am I going to get signed? Dash had Show No Mercy and Rain and Blood. So that was kind of a no-brainer. He wanted them both. And I mean, didn't we all?
Right.
But I had South of Heaven, Hell Awaits, and Seasons in the Abyss. And I got to say, out of those three, I'm probably partial to Seasons in the Abyss. So I had him sign that one.
Wow. That's a great story. Let me ask you this. When he came off the bus, did he have any kind of handler, or was it him actually saying, "Just one, because I got to go"?
It was just him. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Because he's kind of a household name. I mean, to 15 people, that's not bad. You know what I mean? And if it would have been, he couldn't have. If it would have been 30, that's a bit of a mob scene, and he probably wouldn't have even tried to approach.
Right. I could tell that we saw him leave the building and get on the bus, and then this girl came along with a catered meal, and she went on the bus and came back off the bus, and I'm thinking, oh, dang, they're going to eat dinner before they come out and see us. So we had to wait for a little while. Yeah. And eventually Chuck Billy and Eric Peterson came out first, and then a little while later, Dave finally came out, and he was great. I mean, he signed the albums, took the photos. I got to give a shout to Gary Holt, man. That guy, he was awesome. My wife dropped us off in the parking lot, and me and Dash were out of the car. I don't think we were in the parking lot 2 minutes, and he had all his Exodus stuff signed. Wow. And it's because we saw the Lee, the other guitarist for Exodus, was pacing up and down the length of the tour bus, and he was on a cell phone.
Right.
And we recognized him.
By the way, on the road, that's called directing traffic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was.
Where's so and so? Oh, he's directing traffic. That means you're on the phone, kind of like doing biz on your phone out in the parking lot.
He was just pacing back and forth, and I told Dash, let's be cool. Let him finish the phone call. So we're standing outside the bus while Lee is on the phone, and the bus door opens up, and it's a road guy, some crew guy,
Mhm.
and he goes, "Hey man, does your kid want those albums signed?" And we were like, "Yeah." And we looked up the staircase of the bus, and there's Gary at the top of the staircase. He goes, "What's up, dudes? You want those records signed?" And Dash was like, "Yeah, yeah." And we handed him Bonded by Blood, and we said, "Only you and Tom on this one, please."
Right.
and Gary passed it on to the bus, and he goes, "Only Tom on this one. They're very specific, guys." And so he was
got a
really
good chuckle.
he was super cool. And then, of course, we had Persona Non Grata, the latest album, which they're all on, so they all signed that one.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, during the show, I saw the crew guy again, and I said, "Hey, man, really wanted to thank you. That was really cool of you to come off the bus." And he says, "It was all Gary, dude. Gary was looking out the window, and he saw your kid out there with those records, and he goes, 'Ask that kid if he wants his record signed.'" And I just thought that was really cool. That's a guy who remembers being,
Gotta love it.
a fan himself. So
Yeah, Gary is real.
props to you, Gary.
Yes, love Gary Holt. Never
Yeah.
met the man, but love Gary Holt.
He
Now,
was a sweetheart.
now this that's what a crazy bang up heavy metal weekend we've all had here in Texas. So
Yeah.
everyone go see Bass Strikes Back tour.
Awesome.
If you were at Hell's Heroes in Houston all weekend, they're probably wrapping that up today. Bless you. Just
Yeah.
bless your dark black heart. Bless you. Now, we've got a great episode. Tell us about it today, Dave.
Yeah, we've got Paul Unger is our guest today. And Paul is, I like to call him like a foot soldier of rock and roll. He's
Yes.
one of these guys that's just a passionate fan and has turned all that passion into, he's done a lot of promoting and flyering and shouting from the rooftops. He's one of those guys that got bit hard by the rock and roll bug when he was younger and has done everything in his power to support and champion the bands that he loves. And that passion has taken him, to some pretty crazy places and has resulted in some pretty cool stories that he shares with us today. But we've had guys like Paul on the podcast before. They're kind of these behind the scenes players that sort of make the whole thing run. They're not the household names. They don't have albums in the record store, but without them, the machine doesn't run as smoothly as it does. So Paul's going to share some of his stories with us today about his passion for rock and roll.
I'm really happy that we got someone that I call a friend who I only met because I noticed that he was rabid,
Yes.
about about talking about rock and roll, about expressing his emotional feelings about it, and whatever he was willing to drink the punch to help you spread the word of your band and really connect with other people like him. And I've been calling him the one-man street team before there was such a thing called a street team.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet my friend Paul Unger on the Talk Louder podcast. You're the kind of guy, Paul Unger is the kind of rock fan, super fan, that would roll down the windows of his car and drive 1,000 miles yelling at the top of his lungs to tell someone about a band or an artist that he loves and enjoys to the maximum, even if it killed him and he went broke doing it. He would drive across the states and into the ocean and into Canada and scream at the top of his lungs how great a band. Here's a band that, do you like rock and roll? Here's a band for you.
Ironically, I have done that.
I don't doubt it. That's why I'm throwing this out there. So, in many less words than that, off when we weren't recording, that's what I told Paul as the reason we're talking to you today, Paul.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
Super fan.
Yep. Hey, Dave, turn up your microphone or get closer to it or something. Yeah, that's better.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. we love people like Paul. We've had a few people on the show who aren't necessarily household names, but I've said it before and I'll say it again today with Paul here. It's people like that that are sort of the foot soldiers that sort of make the whole thing roll. You know, you've got a lot of behind the scenes people that make the bands happen, and you got a lot of fans that promote the bands by word of mouth or with a website or with a fan club or a street team or whatever. Or just by, constantly talking out in the scene in the city in which they live and generating excitement, and those people always have great stories, and they often don't have a platform by which to share them. So we love having guys like Paul to kind of give us a little bit of share your enthusiasm with us, if you will.
So we're going to let Paul eventually talk. But
we are.
No, thank you.
Until
I
we
thought he
let
was
him,
just a pretty face.
until we let him talk, I wanted to say I've called Paul the one-man street team. Before there was such a thing in my world, I had never heard of a street team, but I had heard of Paul Unger before. Tell us about. Let's start right there, Paul. You're almost ready to speak. I promise we're going to let you talk. Tell us about what is Noisy Fans of America. Explain in depth why, what, where, when you got that going.
Well, no comment.
Okay, see you later. Nice episode.
Dave, as a metal journalist, when was do you remember the first time or any time that you had a major disaster when you went to go do an interview with a big rock star and something disastrous happened? Either your batteries went dead, or in your recorder bit the dust, or you had all kinds of questions prepared and the person didn't want to answer the question. How many times did that happen?
It's probably happened. It's happened. I'll say that. I can't recall how many times, but the classic one, and it certainly probably isn't the first, but I remember doing a phone interview with Ronnie James Dio, and I got too close to the recorder with my phone, and this squall of feedback went over the line and blasted him right in the ears. And we had barely said hello. We were just getting started.
Right.
And I said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And he said, in classic Ronnie James Dio, I'll never forget it. He said, "It's okay, Dave. I've heard feedback before." But I was mortified. I was mortified.
Let me tell you the story about my first disaster. So
hold on. I want to hear about your disaster, but real quick then, what is Noisy Fans of America? Just so, because it's going to come up again.
Noisy Fans of America started as a fan club I've always been noisy. I've always been a fan, and I always sort of loved that name. But when I started running a fan club for the band Noisy Mama, it just seemed appropriate to make it a legitimate business, so to speak.
Right.
And, but back to my disaster story.
Right.
So I started this music magazine. In the first couple issues, I just wanted to focus on new music, signed and unsigned bands. Then I decided, okay, I want to start doing an interview. Start interviewing bands and stuff. And the first one, I figured, well, Dangerous Toys is coming to town. And I was like, okay, I'm really excited. I don't know how to, I think I did know how to get a hold of you, but I was like, well, we'll just me and Crazy Dan, we'll just show up early at the show and catch you at sound check and offer to buy you lunch. And so you agreed. You said, let's go to Hooters. We went to Hooters, ordered some wings. And I had all these questions prepared. And the first question I asked you, you said, I asked you a question. You said, no comment. Next question, please. I got all flustered. Now I look at my recorder and it's not working. And so I had to spend the whole interview trying to handwrite your answers. And it was a massive disaster. So I was like all excited when the first question you asked me, I was going to say, no comment. Next question, please.
Well, the first,
I remember that.
The first answer to your first question was easy for you to write.
Right.
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 So you're welcome.
It didn't make much of a good read, though.
Not really. It wasn't, because all the questions were all like in an order. And so you screwed the first one up, and took me about halfway through, and then I was all flustered because I
do you remember what the question was? I'll answer it right now, 35 years later. What is it?
why Danny Aaron didn't leave? Why did he leave the band?
Why did Danny Aaron leave the band?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know by now why he left the band?
Yes,
of course you do. Yeah, of course you do.
Our listeners might not. So
he was uncomfortable. He was going. I'm not going to say it's because of religion. I'm not going to say it's because he had a new lady in his life. But he was being. He needed a break from. He didn't feel comfortable being in a band that was where lyrically we were talking about the things we were talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I think that he's come to his senses then and realized that it's all in the grandiose scheme, tongue in cheek and fun. But I think that where he was at the time, it was a little weird for him.
Right.
And I think he needed a break.
Well, there you go. There's your answer.
You need some time to write that down?
No, I got it recorded.
Oh, you're recording this as well?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
So is that
me and Dave better be on our best behavior then if you're recording this. Because we can edit our shit out. I don't know what you're going to leave in.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you started this Noisy. What was the name? Noisy Fans of America? Or?
Yes.
So it was essentially a fan club for fans kind of thing, or
a band called Noisy Mama.
It was a band.
Mm-hmm. Noisy Mama is a band, and he started a fanzine for that. And here you go. Who does that? Well, someone like Paul does that, who believes in something and actually probably turned that whole thing into a very small empire of a way for fans to connect, and not just Noisy Mama fans.
Well, originally, Noisy Mama was a band called White Noise back in the early middle 80s. And then they got signed by Atco Records and East West. And I begged them, I'd do anything to help you guys. Oh, we're big rock stars. We don't need your help and stuff. So their album went out. They went on tour. We actually got to see them in Houston. And then, I moved back to Ohio and I went to one of their shows. It was a New Year's Eve show in Cleveland. And I told them, I said, hey, you know what? I'm starting to collect a pretty big portfolio of, some pretty good bands that I've been working for. And they said, let's have a meeting. And then I started working for them. And of course they got dropped. And then there was, they went through a bunch of changes, but they were one of the first few bands that I ever worked for where I actually gained a lot of contacts that were people like Ann Layton, and some really, really important big people that I looked up to, and so that, like, I had worked for several other bands and I got a lot of respect from other bands, but they were the first ones that I really, really started my network of friends that were very helpful throughout the years, and even to today.
Probably your list of contacts is similar to a list that Dave probably has.
Probably.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned a name that Ann Layton was. I'm forever indebted to her. She's one of the first journalists who publicly acknowledged me and championed me and mentioned me in an interview that she did as a rising upcoming star in the metal journalism thing or whatever. And when I was, in my early 20s or whatever that was, it meant the world to me that this woman who at the time was working for Hit Parader magazine even knew my name and knew that I was out of Texas, and I was honored. So I've always had a soft spot for Ann in my heart because she encouraged me and helped push me along. So thank you, Ann.
I still have a very soft spot in my heart for Ann Layton. Likewise, she was the Hit Parader editor, and I was really big into writing letters, and I would organize letter writing campaigns, and I started a letter writing campaign for Noisy Mama, and we sent it to Metal Edge, Rip, and all the big magazines. And, there's a story with me and Jerry Miller with Hit Parade or with Metal Edge, but, and it was sort of a negative story. But then Ann sat down and hand wrote me a letter that was probably 13 pages long.
Wow.
And I still have it. And it was like how much she loved Noisy Mama. She loved the fact that of all the effort that I was making. And I still own that letter, and I still pull it out every now and then when I get bummed out about something. And I know that she's still on my side. And she actually just helped me with the Bridget West campaign. So she's still in my heart, and I still love her.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you're still actually doing something that's ultimately a thankless job. Thankless by way of, you're not looking for someone to give you money or pat you on the back or give you a hug, but to understand the respect that you got from someone like Ann Layton, an editor for a glossy hard rock magazine that everyone loves, is huge.
Yeah.
Journalism, especially when your job is to help promote the band in a good light, even if you sort of have to put your personal opinions aside sometimes about the artist that you're writing for, if it's on assignment. Coming from someone like you, Paul, that is only really writing about things that you completely in full force believe wholeheartedly for. That is a thankless job because first, before all of it, you're a fan.
Right.
So you're not going to let anyone get in your way. You will trample right over them, whatever it takes to get them to come to the show, buy the record, listen to a song, sign a petition, call MTV, whatever your campaign is really soldiering. It's a thankless job. And you still did it for a lifetime. And you, in my opinion, you're still doing it on every level or some kind of level, depending on what day of the week it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it, Paul? What is it that drives you after all these years? Because I find myself sort of in a similar boat. And, there's, at least in my case, there's certainly not a great deal of money involved in it. And I'm 55 years old now, and I have other things going on in my life. I'm a busy man. But what is it that...
What?
Yeah. What is it? What is it that keeps you... What kind of keeps that fire burning, to keep doing stuff when there's very little return?
Well,
and how do you find the time for it?
I don't have time for it. Actually, I just went and got a second job. I'm working 60 hours a week though. And I wake up at 2:00 in the morning just so I can spend an hour and a half to help Bridget or, help promote some of these podcasts and stuff. But I love the music first and foremost. It's like, we all grew up in an age where we had the little transistor radio stuck in our bed when we were supposed to go to bed. And we rocked then. Then we got our 8-track player and our, stereo. Back then we had awesome radio stations that we could discover new music. And we used to be able to go into record stores. And, I was very, very grateful that I have one of the best record stores in my hometown. And I used to go there religiously 2 or 3 times a week. And if I was still there, I would still be there. Yesterday was record store day. And, it starts with the music. And then one of the first bands I ever I wouldn't say worked for, but one of the first bands that I really got dedicated into help promoting was Queensryche. And at that time, in the early 80s, they had an awesome fan club. And they used to tell you, write letters, here's all the addresses and phone numbers. Call your radio stations and stuff, and they gave you the information. And I was calling Florida, New Mexico, any radio station on there. I'm like, damn it, play some Queensryche, And back then the response was, what's Queensryche? Who's Queensryche? Queen who? And then then all of a sudden things started taking off. They're on Grammys playing Silent Lucidity. And, every time you turned on the radio, Silent Lucidity was on there. And everybody goes, man, I'm getting sick of that song. And I turned it up because I was like, I earned that. Every time I called a radio station, I heard Queen Who. And then it's like, it made me really proud. And because I really did feel like I was a part of that success. And that's how it sort of started. And then once I got those contacts and stuff, then I went to Pariah, which, I hope we can talk a lot about Pariah today.
Of course we can.
And,
so did the guys in Queensryche ever acknowledge, were they aware of your efforts or was
no? I can't say that because the funny thing is I did a video. It was called Paul Does Ohio. It was about different ways that you can promote Queensryche. I went to the local radio station. They let me go in and videotape them playing I Don't Believe in Love. And the DJ was actually a really good friend of mine, and he loved Queensryche, and he videotaped me as he was dedicating it to me. And then I was on MTV several times regarding Queensryche. I had a video dedicated to me. And then I did this video, and mostly because at the time I had like all these pen pals, and I was writing about, hey, I went to this club in Cleveland to go see this band, and hey, I went to see Queensryche at the Cleveland Coliseum. And so I decided to go to the Cleveland Coliseum, videotape videotape the arena and say, hey, Queensryche played here, and like I did all this video, and I wanted to prove that I was a Queensryche fan, but I also wanted to prove how you can promote bands and stuff. And I sent it to the band, and I know a couple of the band members saw it, and I know the Michael Wilton's guitar player, his mom, who actually ran the fan club at that time, she acknowledged it and called me and said how they loved it and everything. So I do think that they did, but at the time it was more like I just did it out of the love of the music, and then it wasn't
that's kind of what I was talking about. When I say your name and they either know who you are or they don't know who you are, it's easy for me to say he's a one-man street team. He's a super fan. He's keeping it real worldwide 24/7 for rock and roll. And if he's a fan, and I used to say the same thing about Metal Dave, it's still true to this day.
Yeah.
If either of you guys are a fan of someone's band, that band could not be a luckier band, because you guys are going to wear it on your sleeve. You're going to wear it, you're going to shout it out loud, literally. Yep. You're going to be in the front row. You're going to write about it. You're going to tell people about it. You're going to stand in front of the record store and, shake babies and kiss hands and throw rallies and whatever you got to do. Now, I want to go back just a little bit. I like how you kind of set it up, but were you in, excuse me if I get this wrong, were you in Niles, Ohio? Did I say that right?
Yes, Niles.
Wow, do you believe I remember that? That Prevagen is kicking in.
Because you've called it everything but Niles in the past.
Yeah, I know it. I called it like Naples. It's like, well, I'm not from Europe, but cool.
So, Paul, you touched on something that triggered a question a minute ago. You were talking about Queensryche. And I know as well as anybody that what you and I do as far as from the journalism end is not it's not very lucrative. So, what would you say is your greatest reward or greatest acknowledgement that you're most proud of after all the efforts that you've poured into a particular band? Has anyone ever come back to you and thanked you in such a way that really left an impression on you?
You know what? He's sitting in this podcast with us, Mr. McMaster.
Dave, I thought you never knew Paul. I thought you didn't know Paul. Yeah. Paul's like calling you out, saying that you
in a former life I was signed to a major label and have a gold record.
You're not talking about Dave.
I'm not calling you out. I said McMaster, Mr. McMaster. At one point, I think it was the year 99, 2000, I met my wife, and we were going through some struggles, and we wanted to move on and stuff. And at that time, the music industry wasn't going in the direction that I really had the passion for. I don't like to mention names, but like Limp Bizkit and Korn and them, it was painful for me to like them, so to speak. And so I decided, my wife and I talked about it, and we decided that I would, step back for a while. And at that time, Dangerous Toys' first album went gold. And Jason and I were talking, and he says, I really want you to have a gold record. And my wife said, you got to have it. And she made arrangements with Jason and got it for me. I think it was over Christmas time or something. And it still sits on my wall. And I know I wasn't a part of that album, but I do feel that I did pour a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and expense on Pissed and artists. And it just made me feel really proud that he acknowledged it that way. And after all, he's got me on his podcast now. So I am extremely grateful for everything.
I wish I could have done more. I keep repeating myself. It's a thankless job being.
And it's not about any of that, because I don't, at the end of the day, it's the music. And, when I'm on my way to work and I'm sitting here, playing Scared, to me, just you providing that music to me is far more reward than anything in this world.
That's a great story.
Wow. Don't make
Ryan
me cry.
Roxie, you guys know I'm friends with Ryan Roxie, and he never gave me any credit until recently. And it didn't matter to me, because at the end of the day, when he come into Pittsburgh or whatever town I was living in, I called him and he'd say, I'll get you tickets, passes, all that stuff. And it wasn't necessary. In fact, half the time I sold those tickets to pay for the front rows, to go buy a scalper to be in the front row. But,
Wow.
Sitting there in the front row saying, damn, here it is, this guy, I watched him grow up. And now he's sitting there playing School's Out. I'm 18,
Yeah.
And to me, that's the biggest reward that, I could ever have.
That's great. I have that same gold record in my living room.
I saw it in one of your podcasts.
Yeah.
But see, now Dave's making it thing that everyone and their dog has a fucking gold.
Yeah. I'm
mean,
diluting the value as we speak.
it was a way to tell guys like you that, for you guys being in the front row and knowing all the words and shouting it from the rooftops about not just the band, not just a band I was in, but rock and roll. It's like I see myself in you guys big time, because Gene and Paul don't thank me for all the money I spent on having 7 KISS t-shirts so I could have a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on wardrobe for my entire youth. And I don't expect to get the mailman's here. I got letters from Gene and Paul. That's not happening.
Right.
It's not about that. Like you're saying, it's not about that. I don't care about that. This shit is emotional for me. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? That rubs off too, because I'll tell you why. You used to sit there and handwrite letters to me, and I know everybody, and I still saved all those letters. And it wasn't just like, hey, thanks for your support. You sat there and wrote like 2-3 page letters, and that meant so much to me. It was like, wow, I can't believe this guy that I love his music. He's always so cool to me. And here he is handwriting letters to me. And you were sitting there telling us about your life. And, I remember you were selling coffee and stuff, You worked at a coffee shop and stuff.
Well, I was roasting coffee beans, to be clear.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a storefront. It was like a warehouse like a distributor kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, that was an interesting job. And we got to rehearse in there for free.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But
Paul, is it? Do you play music at all? Are you like myself? I'm a frustrated musician, which is kind of why I branched into the journalism deal because it was my way of sort of staying in the game without having any real musical talent. I just knew I had to be in the world of music and promoting and being a fan and enjoying the excitement. So my avenue into that, since I can't tune a guitar, my avenue in was journalism. So,
right.
do you have any musical ability at all? Do you play?
I have somewhat the similar experience. I always, for as long as I can remember, and I have old 8mm film, silent movie, black and white film of me, carrying a drum set or drum down the road. I just know that at one point when I was born to rock. I know that I always had a love for drums. And in elementary school, I went out for the band or whatever, and I tried to play drums, and I practiced and practiced and practiced, and I couldn't keep a beat for anything. And then I went on and took drum lessons through several different outlets. And then I went to my first major concert, Rush, and I saw Neil Peart. And I said, there's no way I'll ever, I don't care how many hours I practice, I'll never be a Neil Peart. And I guess, everybody wants to be the best and stuff. So, that goal was way out of reach. So,
may I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
It's like the only thing, I love that story because it still expressed so much passion about you being drawn to it and wanting to do it and feel like you were part of it automatically. Like you said, you were born to do it, right?
Yep.
The what gets me is when people, and it's not just you, but something you said, it's a very popular sort of like answer that seems to fall on the negative about everybody wants to be the best. And I think that that's people's downfall. The best does not exist. You strive to push yourself because you have a passion and that you are drawn to. You said everything right until you got to, I wanted to be the best. I saw Neil Peart and I got bummed out and I threw my drumsticks in the garbage can,
Well, if everybody did that, there wouldn't be another drummer on the planet. So
right.
Thankfully, not everybody got that frustrated.
Right. Yeah. So it's never too late to pick it back up. Just set your goals lower. Just say your goals.
At one point, I discovered that. I know Dave's using the word journalist. I was never a journalist. I couldn't put a proper sentence together if I tried.
I've seen a couple. I've seen a couple of sentences you've written that are pretty damn good, Paul.
I know, and I'm horrible at it, and I know that, but I think that once as long as you show it through your heart, people connect to it.
That's right.
And if I don't do it, who's going to?
Well, that's the way why you're here today, buddy.
But at the time, I did enjoy writing letters to to other music lovers and to other people in music and stuff, and such as yourself. I did love doing that. And like I said, with the Queensryche thing, I would write letters and they were probably 10 pages long and babbled and stuff. And I didn't care. But every week when you get or every month you get the metal edge, and all of a sudden, something that you said in your letter, appeared there somehow, some way. And, they said, in order for your band to be in Metal Edge, you have to pay for an advertisement. But then all of a sudden, Noisy Mama's in there every month, So I do believe in the power of the pen. I do believe that if it is properly written, it can be, it would be more beneficial. But I just knew I did that better than playing drums. And that's why I went with that direction. But and you'd seen some of my flyers; they're horrible. I will be the first one to admit it. But
they're not that bad. They're not bad. Bad.
Pariah,
the idea.
I just took their logo and put it on there, and I hand wrote on there and said, "Be at the show." I'm going to save that story for later, though.
What
That's
else
a
do
good
you
point.
need to say? I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
you're screaming it from the rooftop, like I say, you know.
Just
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, you opened the door and you mentioned Pariah earlier. Tell us about your involvement with Pariah. And for those who are listening who may not be familiar with Pariah, first of all, our producer, Jared Tuten, the producer of the Talk Louder podcast, was in Pariah. They were an Austin, Texas band, contemporaries of Dangerous Toys, signed to Geffen Records, off to what seemed to be a pretty promising start. As so often happens, it never really amounted to, a huge success or anything like that. But you were involved with Pariah, so just I wanted to offer some context there as to who Pariah is for anyone listening. And now tell us how you met those guys and what your involvement was with that band.
Well, back in the early 80s, I moved to Texas. And as I said before, I had a lot of pen pals, and including several in San Antonio, Austin. And the one pen pal, her name was Chris. Her and her friend, lovely friend, Rose. Rose always got elected to be our chaperone. So every time I would go to San Antonio to visit Chris, Rose had to tag along to make sure that we weren't doing anything stupid, which was never a plan. But Chris one day sent me a demo tape of Pariah, the Rattle Your Skull demo, and I fell in love with it. And she said, you should go see them. They're going to come to Houston soon. And they came to Houston, and I went early and hung out and saw their sound check.
I think I have that demo on my rack behind me somewhere.
There you go.
I don't want to break my neck grabbing it. So.
And I still have that demo tape as well. And anyway, I went to go see them. And after sound check, Dave got off the stage, and he's like, I was up there in the front, and he's like, he introduced himself to me, and he said, I told him, I said, I just moved here from Ohio. And he's like, oh, I have family in Ohio. And we started talking, and even to this day, we're sort of still brothers in a way. I did ask him recently if he would be a guest on my podcast, and he said no, but I respect that. And actually, Jared's going to be on my podcast, so that's going to be nice too. But anyway, he took me around, introduced me to all the band members, and he says, hey, we're playing Austin next week at Back Room. Why don't you come and see us? And I said, maybe I will. And I drove up there, and then you're sitting there and you're like going, I really dig this band. And then you look over your shoulder and Jason McMaster's standing right next to you. I'm like, damn, this is awesome. And then one time, Pariah was going to come to Houston. It was August 2nd. My birthday's August 1st. I was like, this will be the most awesome birthday party. They were played at the backstage. So I decided I'm going to make up a flyer. I want this show to sell out. And because up to that point, they did well in Houston, but they hadn't really packed the place. And I was bound and determined, no matter what, we're going to pack the place. So I made up, I don't know how many thousands of flyers. I started maybe a month before the show. I'd get my paycheck. I had an extra $100. I'd go make $100 worth of flyers. Then I'd hit all the record stores and all that stuff. Well, then there's this concert coming to Houston at the Summit. It was the Operation Rock and Roll Tour. And I said, badass, I'm going to go. I was the first one in that parking lot, and I hit the parking lot as those cars came in. I gave them flyers. Please, next week is my concert, my birthday party. I want it to sell out. And, you could hand the people the flyers, especially back then in the 80s. There was all those religious nuts passing out the, religious flyers and stuff, and people just dropped them. I sat there and talked to every single person. I'm like, look, if you never heard of Pariah, they're a badass rock and roll band. You're here tonight for rock and roll. Come next weekend to backstage. So I think it made a big difference, but even when I went in the venue, I walked up and down the aisles and handed out flyers. And next week came, it was my birthday. That place sold out, and Pariah found out about it. They found out that, hey, there was this, guy passing out flyers at the Operation Rock and Roll show. And I'm sure a lot of those people brought that flyer in and asked them to sign it. and told them how they got the flyer. And they found out it was me and called me like a week later. And she said there was a band meeting and we decided we want you to be a part of our team. And I've been very proud of that even to this day. And and then I do have another Pariah story. I don't know. I don't remember exact. It was in '94, early '94, and Dave had called me in Ohio, and he said, "Look, you know, we got together. We want to do one last ditch effort for a whole national tour to support the album." And he said, "You know, can you help us? Do you have any information on clubs or any place that we can play? We don't care. We'll play for gas money. We don't care. We just want to do this." And I said, "Look," I said, "I have all kinds of information, but I don't have many club information." I said, "But I will put together what I have." And I said, "I can and will tell you, if you come to my hometown, I promise you, you know, if you get the club owner and he's wishy-washy, don't know whether he wants to promote you or, book you or not, let me know who it is. I will personally go there and I will have a talk with him." So he calls me and he says, "There's this club in Youngstown called the Magic Twanger." And he said, "We want you to..."
Love that.
Yeah, Magic Twanger.
Love that.
And he says,
my dirty mind working overtime.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was very, very nice place. It was, awesome. It was very big venue. And anyway, it turns out, he said, "We're really close to booking there, but they still haven't, So I drove there. As soon as I got off the phone with him, I drove straight to Youngstown. I went to the thing. I asked for the guy, and he come out, and he couldn't have been any cooler. I said, "Look, if you book the band, I promise you, I will, out of my own pocket, I'll promote the show." And he said, "Let's do it then." So Pariah came to my hometown in 1994. I still call it the Party of '94. At the time, I worked for a pizza shop, and they catered all the food and everything. And Pariah pulled in and kicked Ohio's ass. And the turnout was unbelievable. We had travelers from Minnesota, from New Jersey, New York. I'm sure, Jason, Adrian and Julie, they came out. We had a girl from Denver, Colorado that her and this other girl from Pennsylvania, the girl from Colorado took a Greyhound bus, took her a week to get to the show and I invited a couple of these people to my place, and I put them up for 2 or 3 days. At the time, I was also delivering newspapers, and we'd have to get up at 4:00 in the morning and deliver newspapers. And these girls were nuts. They were like, "Let's do it," and we're out there delivering papers and delivering pizzas. And then we went to the show, and it was like, I think you can ask any one of the band members in Pariah. It was an awesome night, and it was an honor for me. I've begged Jason to bring the toys to my hometown. Of course, that's never happened. Ryan Roxie, I've asked him to come to my hometown, and he has not only come to my hometown, but he's been there several times recently.
Well, no one can live up to the story you just told about Pariah. Maybe we're shaking in our boots. We can't.
No.
Not going to be able
You're
to
still more than welcome to come to Niles, Ohio. We will find some kind of corner for you to set up and rock our asses off.
So this infamous party, this yes. Pariah party, the Party of '94, as you call it.
Yes.
Wasn't there camcorders? I mean, it was '94. There were camcorders. This might have been pre-cell phone. But there were camcorders. I swear to the rock and roll gods that I have a VHS tape that says Pariah, Party of '94.
Yeah.
What would be on that video?
A drunken Paul Unger that was following everybody around and harassing them.
With a camcorder narrating?
Yeah.
Well,
you have a copy of
I do, and I need to break that out and digitize it. Because I think the tape is probably going to burst into flames.
I tried to digitize it, and I just met this guy in New York that he went to go see Dave or being the sound guy for Blues Traveler, and he went because he said he was a Pariah fan and stuff, and he went to go meet Dave, and I wrote him and I said, here, I'm going to share a couple pictures with you, and then we started chatting, and I told him I would send him some copies of some of my Pariah videos, and for whatever reason, when I digitized the '94 stuff, it didn't come out. I have to redo it, I think. But if you do it before me, I'd love to have a copy of it.
Well, I'm set up to do it. I'll see what I can do.
That would be great.
Yeah.
There's two of them. And I don't think you have the original one.
There's the clean version.
No, there's the one that was the party 3 or 4 nights before the Pariah concert. No, this was the pre-show party.
So give us a sense of, you're talking about VHS tapes and things of that nature, and you've obviously been chronicling your love of rock and roll for decades now. So give us a sense of, what does your collection look like? I mean, is it an entire room just floor to ceiling full of stuff, or what? Storage units? What?
Actually, it's just the opposite. And originally, when I moved to Texas, I've lived in Texas probably 3 or 4 times, and then I've moved all over the country. I've lived in Florida and Ohio, and now I'm in Pennsylvania. And over the years, when the last time I left Texas wasn't a good thing. It was a very horrible experience in my life. I don't ever really like talking about it.
You don't.
But when I left there, I pretty much left almost all my belongings. And when I say about a Greyhound bus ride, to go to Niles, Ohio, from Niles, Ohio to Houston, to just get in your car and drive straight through, it's 24 hours. That Greyhound bus ride home was about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And it was an experience I'll never do again, if I at least not ever want to do it again. And but unfortunately, I had one of my best friends, Terry. He pretty much inherited all my really, really cool stuff. And then, in the past 6 years, I had to move to Pennsylvania, and, we've had at least 30 deaths in our immediate family and best friends in the past 6 years. And seems like every 2 months I'm going to a funeral. And when we moved here, we lost my wife's mom and dad, and we're still going through their stuff. Mm-hmm. And when we moved here, her mom had Alzheimer's. So, she didn't want us to move our stuff in because she thought we were kicking her out. So everything went in closets and garage and sheds and stuff. And then, my mom and dad passed recently, and we're going through their stuff. And I don't think there's anybody out there that's going to really want. I know my wife doesn't want half my junk. What's my junk is.
I think all of us can say that.
I don't know if you've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed the things that are sitting behind me and Dave.
Yes.
But that's like basically the garbage heap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've gone through a lot of the stuff, and I was one of the biggest Queensryche fans, and I was told that I could have a Queensryche museum, and I looked through all this stuff, and I was like, it was all one of a kind stuff that, I'm like, I don't want to see it get thrown out. And at this rate, I don't have a man cave or studio where I can showcase it. So I packed all this stuff up and sent it to a very dear friend in Arizona that's still a Queensryche fan. She still travels and goes to all the shows. And awesome. If anybody that would appreciate it, I knew she would. Awesome. And I told her, now you start the Queensryche museum.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so, I've been on the receiving end of some of that stuff myself. I think too, for whatever reason, some people sort of outgrow their love of music, or at least outgrow the love of collecting all the memorabilia. They still love the music itself, but they don't cling to the material things like the three of us do, apparently.
Right.
And I often find myself on the receiving end of somebody will say, I was going through a closet, I found this box full of stuff. I've got no use for it. You know who would love it? Dave. So
Yeah.
I end up getting stuff like that also. And I love it. I appreciate it. But I've
Yeah.
gotten to the point where I've had to tell people, as much as I appreciate the thought and the sentiment, I can't take another single poster. I just
Yeah.
have no wall space for anything.
Yeah.
But I do love it. So I can understand, having it sort of overwhelm your entire house and start spilling
Right.
into the front yard and all that stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about your acquaintance or friendship, I should call it actually, with Ryan Roxie, who plays guitar for Alice Cooper, and you helped sort of nudge him to get us on the Talk Louder podcast, and we appreciate that very much.
Yeah, he was great.
Your relationship with him goes far back. What year did that start, and who was he playing with at the time?
Well, he told the story about the Electric Angels. I was actually helping the band Danger Danger, and they were the opening band on that tour.
Mm-hmm.
And there was these two girls in Austin. They live in Austin, Patty and Melissa, and they were at the time, like you said before about the fanzines and putting your phone numbers in there, and then these fans let them crash, the bands crash while they're on the road. Well, I know majority of that Texas leg, the Electric Angels stayed at Patty and Melissa's. And I was going to all the shows, but I was going for Danger Danger. And these girls, I go to the San Antonio show, we're at Sneakers, and I see these two girls up there just dancing away at Electric Angels. And I said, I went up to them and I said, hey, didn't I see you last night in Dallas? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, where do you live? And they said, Austin. And I was like, oh, okay. And they said, we want to introduce you to the Electric Angels. Well, Ryan was, and it is sort of funny because I interviewed him on my podcast, but the very first time I ever met him, he was outside in the parking lot signing autographs. And I'm sitting there thinking, but he's the opening band. Like he thinks he's like, Elton John or something. And he was like, I was sitting there going, boy, this guy really got an ego. And then who would have thought, that he and I would become friends someday down the road. But, I met him, and then, every night I would say, hey, Ryan. He's like, what's your name? And I was like, okay. And, but then when I was on tour with KISS, I went on tour with KISS, what is it, 95 or something like that, 96. And Gene's guitar tech was a guy named Kenny Barr. And, I had my magazines there on tour with me, and I was passing them around to all the KISS fans and stuff. And I gave him a copy, and I said, and the next day he come up to me, he's like, dude, he's like, I know half those people that are in your magazine. And he's like, that's really cool. He's like, it was really positive. There wasn't any slamming on any of the bands or anything. And I said, yeah, I was just an informational thing. And he said, well, so he and I became really good friends. Well, after the KISS tour, of course, we got invited to the MTV Unplugged, where KISS brought out Peter and Ace and stuff. And then about a month later, after it was completely over, they announced Alice and Scorpions. Alice was going to open up with Scorpions. And this was in 96, because it was right after Ryan started with the band. But anyway, we go. I went and, of course, got front row seats, and I'm sitting there, and I first one in the door, and I'm sitting there, and I look up on stage. They're setting up for Alice, and there's Kenny Barr, and I was like, Kenny, and he's like, hey, Paul, he's like, give me a little bit. I'm really busy, but give me a minute. I'll come talk to you. I was like, okay. Well, later he comes down, he hands me a couple passes after Alice, and he said, I'll talk to you, after the show. And I was like, okay. So all of a sudden the lights go down and the band comes out. There's Ryan Roxie. And I see Kenny Barr handing him the guitar. And I was like, no way. Like, what are the odds that Kenny Barr is Roxy's guitar player or guitar tech? It was. So then we go backstage after Alice, and Kenny goes, "Come here, I want to introduce you to this guy." And he goes, and Roxy says, "Oh, I know this dude," And Kenny looks at me, and I go, he and I go back a ways, and he's like, "Oh, that's really cool." Well, then Ryan and I started talking, and he says, "Well, I got this demo tape," and he goes, "Let's follow me, and we'll go on the bus, and I'll give you a demo tape." And it was Dad's porno mag.
Oh,
and
right.
He handed it to me, and I listened to it on the way home, and I was like, I was hooked. It's like I even to this day, I still think that's like one of his best work.
Wow.
I really, really enjoy Dad's porno mag, but of course, at the time I handed Ryan my magazine and certain merchandise thing that we used to sell with Dangerous Toys. And I made up some of those for
You can
Ryan.
say what they were.
Well, no, because I might have somebody watching here that I don't really want them to know. But
What were they then? Were they, if I say it, you'll say yes? Were they panties? Was it condoms? Was it shot glasses? It was condoms,
you know what they were.
Condoms.
No.
Dildos?
No. But anyway,
I don't know what they were. Were they brassiers? Were they,
tobacco pipes.
Oh, tobacco pipes.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what? Those were cool. So those of you out there who might have one of these broken teeth tobacco pipes, you have.
We actually had Dangerous Toys.
Yeah, Dangerous Toys ones too, right. We sold those at the merchandise booths, and you either had to have 2 or 3 of them or you weren't interested at all. Right.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there has one of those, you did them for broken teeth too.
Oh, did I?
I don't have any of those anymore.
Really?
Yeah, those went like hotcakes. Says a lot about my friends.
Yeah.
They like
the
tobacco.
funny thing is that night that I gave Ryan the magazine, and he gave me the demo tape, and then about a week later he sends me a letter and he says, "Well, I did some research because Ryan's old band Electric Angels, when he left the band, they still played, but they played under the band called Loveless. The Loveless.
Called what? The Loveless.
The Loveless.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically Electric Angels without Ryan, with a different guitar player. And I started doing some work for them, and it turns out the bass player, he actually right now is Green Day's manager, and
wow. Green Day's sound man lives like a block away from me that way.
Yeah. And he also manages a bunch of other bands, but at the time he worked for a company. He worked for the Cure's publishing company, and he was managing several bands, and one of them really wanted to sell these pipes, and so I sold a boatload of them to them, and when Ryan says, "Hey, I did some research to check up on you, because I saw the Loveless was in your magazine," and he goes, "I heard about that merchandise and stuff." He goes, "I'd like to get my hand on some of those too." So pretty much that's how our friendship really started, was through Dad's. I met him early at the Electric Angels, but we became friends when he was with the whole Dad's porno mag thing.
Well, it sounds like he using Ryan's words, he did some looking behind the scenes and some research, some detective work on who Paul Unger was and what good you are bringing to fellow man through merchandising and shouting the words of rock and roll like a preacher. I'm really glad that happened, but if I would have run into him backstage through Kenny Barr for the reintroduction, you should have played like, "Oh, what's your name again?"
Yeah.
He said, "I know this dude." He had to remember your name. You could have played that off. Touche, right?
Yeah.
Ryan is really kind of a special guy, isn't he?
He is. He's very genuine. And he's always been that way.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it's like when he says, you know, I don't want to go backstage and just hang out and waste my time. I'd rather get out and feed off the energy of the crowd. I don't. Have you ever played in Pittsburgh?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Of course.
Because Pittsburgh's pretty
Dave,
special.
You ever played in Pittsburgh?
I have not. They won't meet my contract demands.
Okay, all right. Brown M&M thing. I get it.
Yeah. Pittsburgh's pretty special. Like, you know, when I always say I was born in Ohio, but I was raised in Texas. Because as soon as I graduated from Ohio, I moved to Texas. And I learned so much about life and the general good of people. In Ohio, a lot of people are cutthroat. They're vicious. They'll backstab you as soon as you turn your back. And in Texas, I learned that the people there are very genuinely great people. And I always say this story because here in Pennsylvania, where I live now, the people are very genuine and good people. But the difference between Texas and Pennsylvania is in Texas, if you were down and out, they would give their shirt off their back for you. If they couldn't, if you were in a ditch, they'd jump in the ditch with you and stay there with you until you got out of the ditch. And here in Pennsylvania, they just say, we'll pray for you. And there's nothing wrong with either way. But in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, they allow tailgating. And it brings so much to the whole, like every concert is an event. So as soon as that parking lot opens, there's tents going up, there's barbecue pits, you know, and people, they turn the volume up on their stereos and they got the loudest. It is
parking lot. Yeah,
it is. And it's like, it is so awesome. And the one year, Ryan said he had started this thing. He called it the rock and roll parking lot meet and greet. But he would like go across the street to the local bar and he would post on Facebook. And at that time, nobody really knew who he was. And he would say, hey, anybody that sees this, I'll be across the street at the bar before the show.
Hold on. Hold the phone for a second. He still does that shit. He did it on the cruise.
Yeah. Yep.
Just this February, it's like if you had if he had your email address or your phone number or you were friends on Facebook, he posted a mass posting. Hey, this isn't for anybody, but if I even know you a little bit, be at this part on the ship at the front of the boat at 11 a.m. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna have mimosas, and I'm gonna be holding court. You guys meet me there, and we'll have a big group hug, kind of a thing. He still does that shit.
He does, and so so when he was coming to Pittsburgh, I said, "Listen."
But for the record, I didn't go, but go ahead.
Why didn't you go?
It's beauty sleep. I don't know.
What happened?
Breakfast.
Yeah. But anyway, the one time he was coming to Pittsburgh and I said, why don't you bring it out to the parking lot? I was like, you know, and what I did was I had this big umbrella that you have in your picnic umbrella with your big table and stuff. And I loaded it up in my car. I got there real early. I stuck this umbrella, I opened it up, stuck it out in the back seat of my car, and I made up a bunch of flyers and I hit the parking lot and said, if you want to meet Alice's guitar player, come on over to that big umbrella that's sticking out of that car. And by the time I made it all the way around the venue and passed out these flyers, there was this line that like went forever. Like it went down the street and around the corner. And Ryan came out and he signed autographs and took pictures. Now I grabbed this merchandise. I flipped open my trunk and I sat there and sold his merchandise out of my trunk. And I told him, I said, and anyway, he sat there and he never left until every last person, you know, got a signature or a picture or anything.
Wow.
And then a year later, they come back. And I did the same thing, but I was running late and I didn't get the parking spot that I normally would like to have had. And I walked around the parking lot. And when I come back, there was these nuts that were parking in my spot. and they had this 14-foot guillotine, and the old man was an artist, and he painted this awesome Alice Cooper, design and stuff on this guillotine. And Ryan's standing out there signing autographs before I even got around the parking lot. So we sat there and sold merchandise. Now every year this party gets bigger and better. We have a guillotine, we have an electric chair, we have a gallows where you can get a picture where you can hang yourself, and there's a coffin. Like
you're turning it into like an Alice Cooper's Nightmare sort of carnival.
It is. It is a carnival.
Promoting rock and roll, as well as just the idea of Alice, and of course Ryan is there holding court.
Yeah, and then
how much does it cost to hang yourself? Just
nothing.
Nothing.
It's just there. It's like.
By the way.
You can get your head into the guillotine.
Just for all the abiding by the whatever FCC rules here, no one's really hanging themselves.
No,
but it's free to hang yourself, Dave.
Yeah,
that's a bargain right there.
Yeah, it's fake hanging yourself. By the way,
I'll tell you what. Like, it's reached the point. Like the first year we did it, we had like a group photo, and Ryan would come out and sign autographs and stuff. And there was one year that he came out. It was at the big outdoor arena. And everybody was cooking and stuff. And he's like, I got to see this, and I wanted to show him where we were parked. So I went and got him. We come out and he was like, I got to tell the band this. And he brought everybody, like he brought the whole entire band except for Alice out, even Nita, which now she doesn't participate anymore. But he brought the whole entire band out. They all sat there and partied with us and stuff. And every year we have a group photo where Ryan will get in the band in a picture with us. And it started out as like maybe 20 people. And now there's like so many people that you can't get everybody in the picture.
It's like 100 people trying to take a selfie. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it is just truly an awesome experience to go see Alice Cooper in Pittsburgh right now.
Wow.
Now, this last time we played.
You mentioned the KISS tour. In what capacity did you work for KISS? And did you have any personal interaction with Gene or Paul? Or what lineup is this? Is this the original reunion lineup? Or
it was 19. Maybe Jason can answer it better than I can.
Hold on. So let's call it something. Was it the KISS convention tour?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's 90. That's 95, right before.
95, I think it was.
Right before the Ace and Peter first full tour reunion show.
Right.
Okay.
So I worked for a company. I worked for a company called H&H, and they, at that time, every KISS album ever came out on vinyl, everything but KISS Alive 3. So this company went in and licensed KISS Alive 3, and they put it out on vinyl in 3 different colors, and they individually numbered them, and they added a bonus track to it. And then we discovered that Revenge was only on vinyl in the UK when it first came out. So we went and licensed that and put it out on vinyl, on like a colored vinyl, and individually numbered it.
Do you have copies of those on vinyl?
The only thing that I saved from there was the Revenge. We did it on a Japanese obi strip, and it was my job to sit in this warehouse. We got the albums in, and they had these professionally printed obi strips. And
what is an obi strip? I am a dinosaur.
In Japan, they put like what they call an obi strip around the like CD case or the album, and it's basically an advertisement for the album. And then on the backside, if it's a record label, they might advertise another album or so.
So it's an ad. It's an ad that's like a ribbon.
Yeah, like
sort of
hype sticker or something.
Okay. Okay.
So we did all this research, and as far as we knew, there was never an obi strip in the U.S. So we thought it would be really cool to put, especially KISS was huge in Japan. So we thought it would be really cool to do a U.S. obi strip. Well, it was my job to go. Well, first we get the test. We got the albums in, and they got all excited. My bosses got all excited. They went home. They put it on the turntable. The hole was too small. wouldn't fit on the spindle. They're freaking out because we had promised all these KISS fans we're going to have these records out. And so they called me up middle of the night, said, we need you to get down here right away.
Bring your drill.
You know what? I wish we had a drill. I wish we had a drill.
1,000 more.
Yeah. I wish we had a
You'll be
drill.
home next Tuesday.
So I had to, they gave me this hand file and I had to sit there and.
Well, you did it by hand.
I did it by hand.
My God.
So then,
Wow.
Then they gave me this big piece of plywood, and I was
give you a
supposed to-
standing ovation for doing that, by the way. What did I say? That's a thankless job. Bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there drilling these holes, and then my job was to put these OB strips on. So you turn the OB strip over, you turn the album over, and on the back of Revenge, it says the names of the songs and stuff. And on the back of the OB strip, it had the names of the songs. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there and I'm glue sticking these OB strips on. And I got to look and I'm like, I was about, 500 of them into it. And I realized those dumbasses, I said, what is the song? Every Time I Look at You or Every Time I Love You? What's the name of that song?
Look at you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on the OB strip, they had Every Time I Love You or something like that. And as I'm gluing these, I look and I said, oh my God, they fucked up. And I called them middle of the night and I said, dudes, you guys realize, because they spent a fortune. Like there was no way they were ever, even if they sold every album, they weren't going to make any money because of these stupid OB strips. And it turns out they come running over and we had to throw them all away and stuff, and they redid them. Well, I was the one that took the little punch that punched in the individual number and on this OB strip. Well, I saved the number 666 OB strip.
Yes.
On the wrong one, the one that's
the shitty
not
one.
right.
The misspelled shit. That makes it even cooler, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the reason why I took it.
Yeah. So the OB strip, just to be my humor,
right?
It's just for me because I'm gonna laugh at my own joke. That OB strip is the kind of shit that only the big ass nerds hold on to. Oh man, this is cool. I'm gonna keep this. Jason, it's an ad for the new Duran Duran. Well, I like Duran Duran, but it's just an ad for other shits. You get a free Slurpee with this. And it's like only nerds will keep it. Oh, dude, it says KISS on it. Yeah, but it says Walmart on it too.
Yeah. But I mean, we tried to make it cool. They tried to make it cool and stuff.
I'm sure it's cool.
But anyway, the one day they announced the KISS convention tour, and they said, okay, they called me in the office and they said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to load you up in a van. We're going to load all the KISS records on there, and we're going to send you out on road. And I said, cool. So they gave me this atlas, because back then we didn't have cell phones or anything. And they gave me these, the one guy at H&H was a banker, and he was like the president of the bank. And if you went into the bank and you applied for a loan or got a new checking account, they gave you this phone card that for like 3 minutes, you can call somebody anywhere in the United States. So they give me this stack of these phone cards like this. They said every 5 miles, we want you to pull off to the side of the road and go to a payphone and call us and let us know where you're at, what you're doing, and all that stuff. Like whatever. So I got to looking at the map, and they had me going down south and going through Texas and going to southwest because the first show was in LA. So I was like, but I got friends in Denver. I got I was like, by the time I got to Cincinnati, I threw the atlas out the window and I just went my own way. And I'd never stopped and called. They had an arrangement with Holiday Inns that there was a local Holiday Inn that did business at the bank. And the guy says, well, technically we can say that you guys are an employee and you can get a discount, an employee discount, as long as you stay at these Holiday Inns. And then it was arranged that if any of the Holiday Inns were suspicious, that they would call this one, and they had my name on there. Well, once you get out of Ohio and you're in Kansas, there are no holiday ends, you know. So I went to Denver and partied with a friend of mine, actually from Houston, a friend of mine in Houston, and then I called him the next day in Colorado, and he said, dude, you were supposed to be, in somewhere in Arizona, and I was like, I'll be there. I was supposed to pick the one boss up at LAX on a certain day, the night before the concert or the show, the first show. And I made it. I left Colorado and I deadhead and I made it to get him out of the airport. But every show was 12 hours long, and they had like an acoustic set, a 2-hour acoustic set. They had a 2-hour question and answering period. And as we all know, well, anyway, we were done with the first leg of the tour on all the West Coast. And I had a week to go from Arizona to Texas. And, of course, I was really pleased about that. And then unfortunately, I think the Houston show canceled. So I had an extra day. So I stopped at San Antonio and hung out with friends there for a day or two. Then I drove to Houston and hung out there for a while. And then the day of the Dallas show, I drove the night before. But after that first leg of tour, Gene's like, hey, wait a minute. I got this warehouse of all this KISS stuff that, he contacted my boss and he said, I'll give you a deal. We'll ship all the stuff to Houston for the next show. And then, we want you to sell this stuff for us. We said, okay. And, at the time, KISS dolls were the most popular item that people wanted to buy because there was all these vendors and stuff. And then during the acoustic set, they always picked one song to pass around a microphone to let the fans sing. And I am not going to say I'm not a KISS fan, but I'm not a huge KISS fan. When growing up, I liked KISS, and I fell for all.
I'm sorry, the conversation is over now. Me and Dave got to go.
Yeah. Well, at the time, growing up, it was cool.
Sorry, Paul. Totally kidding.
Yes. I mean, at the time, it was really cool in the 70s, to be a KISS fan. But when I compared it to Alice Cooper, I'd rather be scared than, the Love Guns and I loved Alice, probably far more. But on that KISS tour, I cringed when they passed out those microphones for the one song because it made you really respect the vocal range of Paul Stanley because you can't just hand a microphone and have somebody sing some of those songs. And of course, in Dallas, they handed the microphone to who, Jason? Jason McMaster. And
they fucked up.
Gene Simmons should have just said, Paul, go. We got a new singer.
Wow.
You could be the star man. But
well, thank you for saying that. I shit a brick when they walked by and handed that mic out to me.
Yeah.
I might have reached for it.
Did they know who you were?
I might have raised my hand.
Did they know who you were?
What was her name? What was the girl's name that was the tour manager? You worked with her before.
Tommy Thayer was on that tour. He was like the production manager on that KISS convention tour.
Yeah, but
this
there was
him in the Ace costume. So
there was a girl, and I forget her name, but she was the manager. She was the tour manager.
Oh,
and and I remember you telling me that she was a manager for you guys too, the Toys at one point. I forget what her name was.
No, Tim Heine was always the Toys manager.
No, I'm not saying a manager. I meant like she had something to do with you guys one tour. But at least that's what I thought I remembered.
No, but I wish I remember now.
Fitness instructor.
There were fitness instructor, yeah, because I'm so fit. No, it would have. Maybe it would have been somebody that at one point was working with our management firm in Los Angeles, but
It might have been. I don't remember her name.
somebody like that. Yeah, I wish
But
I knew now. It's probably in the tour program, which I believe I have.
right,
I'm sure that the personnel is all listed in there.
right.
But I think
But
how me and Jared Thurman, not Jared Tuten, had gotten into that show was through Tommy.
Okay.
Pretty sure we had tickets through Tommy.
Okay.
And that, they had all that, like Peter's original drum kit from the Alive
Yep.
tour. They had all all the old costumes on mannequins and shit. It was pretty. I was
It
just like,
was
"Whoa,
impressive.
yeah, it was quite impressive.
And
To just
and
kind of
then
walk through Gene's garage, kind of a thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the coolest part was I kept an audio diary because I always said if I was ever going to do a tour, I wanted to document everything. And as you know, most of the time when you're on the road, the shows were 12 hours long. So at midnight, we had to tear it all down and drive. So we're driving at 3:00 in the morning. And when the stuff happens, it's not like you can take a handwrite a diary or something. So I kept an audio diary. It's about 90-minute things, but I had everybody talking into it and stuff. And at one point through the tour, they kept changing things, and they would do a meet and greet. And there was a couple cities where they actually set up a table, and the band sat there, and I would sneak in the line because my table was set up right by where they were doing it. So I snuck in line, and I got Gene to talk on the thing. And
Oh, that's cool.
And I have some video footage of me like backstage when the band was. There was times where they would go on stage, and people would just hand their stuff up to get them signed.
Sure.
And they would take a break and step down, and I would be on the other side of the backstage and stuff. And I got some video footage of it. But like I said, I'm not as big of a KISS fan as you guys. So
right.
it was cool.
At saying that much, do you remember what song I sang when they handed me the mic in Dallas?
Was it who put the X in sex?
Hell to the fuck no.
Hope not.
that was
no.
one of them.
That's
that
not
was
even
one of them.
That's barely a KISS song in my book. That song does not even penetrate my skin to get to my heart. No, it was not that. You have one more guess.
I just remember that was one of the songs that like I would cringe and like run for the opposite direction.
I'm going to say God of Thunder.
No, it was I Want You.
Yeah. I have a video of that.
Yeah, and I do too. Like friends and fans who were there who had video cameras on them. They all turned the camera towards me when they heard me singing, and they videotaped it. I think it's on YouTube, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, I think you can look it up on YouTube.
I'm putting together a website where you can click on certain things, and there'll be audio or stories or whatever. And that is my goal, is one day to digitize that. Where
the links will be fact checker. The links can check your facts as far as your storyline. That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
Because there's enough like publicly published footage that's from home video type of thing, right? That people own the rights to, that are still flying on YouTube, that are going on decades old now, that would probably work. Right. That's cool. That's a good idea.
But anyway, I went through the whole tour, and it was a blast. I really, really had a good time. And then, like I said, the last show was on my birthday in Pittsburgh, and that was the last show of the tour. And I enjoyed and appreciated every minute of it. And then when it was all said and done, well, the night before we were in New York City, and they passed out these tickets, and they said, we're going to do an MTV Unplugged in about a month from now. And they handed me a ticket, and it turns out you didn't have a choice where you sat. And I walked in, and they said, we're going to put you over here in the front row. And the funny thing is if you watch it, I'm yawning because I was so tired and burnt out, and I'm yawning, and everybody's going nuts when Peter, Chris, and Ace Frehley walk out.
And you're taking a nap.
You're
And I was
drooling
like,
on yourself.
and yeah,
That's hilarious.
but I kind of felt bad because there's like all these diehards in there, and they just went berserk.
No,
And-
man, you
And,
had
and I was sitting there
been
yawning.
you had just been on tour with them. You
Yeah.
had seen the same set for 30
Well,
times.
Well, I wasn't expecting Gene, and there was no word that Gene and
Ace.
Peter
Ace
and
and Peter.
Ace were going to come
Right.
out. And so it was exciting. I'm joking about, because like I said, I did grow up, enjoying Kiss's music and stuff, but I don't know, let's face it, after Animalize, I lost interest in them.
Well, you're not alone. You're not alone there. And then the funny thing is I know people who like from Lick It Up on, that's what they love.
Yeah.
They love Hot in the Shade and shit. They have Hot in the Shade on gold vinyl that they listen to every once a week, and it's like,
And
what are
I
you
think,
listening to?
I think
they're like, I thought you were a Kiss fan. I go, that ain't my Kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned, earlier in the show, you mentioned that Rush was your first concert, and obviously, when the bug bit you, it bit you hard. What was the first album that got you interested in rock and roll?
Actually, I have a really there is no first album or first song. I like I said at the beginning, I had a transistor radio when I was a little kid, and they'd say go to bed, and I'd stick it in my pillow, and I just it was just that music, just like music in general, just it was probably back then it was probably Bob Seger and Elton and stuff,
Nice.
but then there was the Kiss phase and everything. But then one time I went to church camp, and the younger kids,
The story just got really good.
the toddlers, the toddlers were all in one cabin. The next, age group of boys were in one cabin, and the girls were in another. So this kid says, I got the 8 tracks. Who's got the player? And everybody's like, what do you mean? We didn't bring the 8-track player. And the one kid says, hold on, I'll be right back. So I don't know if you remember when we were little, they had those little robots. You stuck the instructional 8-track in its belly, and they had little buttons on its chest, and then it would say, what's 1 + 1? Push 2 if it's you push the button, and then their little red eyes blinked and stuff, while they were asking you these questions. Well, the little toddler group had one of those. So the one kid goes, I'll be right back. And he runs down to the toddler room, steals I think it was called 2XL back then. So he takes it and brings it over. And the first 8-track he puts in, British Steel. Oh. And all I can remember is because it was still daylight. And then as the CDs as the music's going, it's getting darker and darker. And by the time it was pitch dark, United, this light's just blinking, these red eyes. And I'm like looking at going, and I'm hearing, British Steel for the first time ever. And I was like, oh my God,
Yes.
And then they put in Pink Floyd, The Wall. And I'm like going, I never heard of such a thing, And I'm like, when's the next church camp? I can't wait to go to church camp. It's like, shit,
Turned into heavy metal, turned into metal church camp.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So then when I came home from church, from the camp, I went to my next door neighbors and I said, dudes, I'm like, there was this band, Judas Priest, man. I'm going to go to the record store as soon as mom takes me to the mall and drops me off, I'm going straight to the record store. I'm buying every one of those Judas Priest albums. And I did. I bought every one of them. And I sat there and rocked every one of them.
This might be the best how'd you get hooked in Talk Louder history.
Church camp on an 8-track. Yeah.
And but I mean, it wasn't even. I love the music, but it was when it was just getting dark and those red eyes were blinking at you. Like,
the metal
listen
god.
to me, I'm sucking you in.
Yes,
breaking the law. And I was like, fuck
yeah. That's so good.
And
so good.
So like, from then I was like, Kiss Who, Judas Priest,
Wow.
this like.
Wow.
And then I did go to a concert before the Rush. Back in the 70s, there was a band called Left End, and they were a local band, but they were on Polydor Records. And basically some people would say they were a Alice wannabe band. Their music was very like Thin Lizzy type rock, but the singer was nuts. His name was Dennis Domenis, and he actually became a really good friend of mine. He recently passed about 10 years ago. Great guy, but he would go on stage and he'd start drinking wine first song, and he would probably go through a dozen bottles of wine. By the end of the show, the first concert I went to was at this amusement park. Every year they had what they called a spring fling, and it was the first night that first day that in the spring that this place opened, and they would have a big concert. And the time I went was with Left End, and at the end of the show, Dennis come out for the encore, and he was like almost butt naked. He was in his, underwear, and he's like, screw you guys. I'm back here getting laid, and I'm drinking, and I'm having fun. I don't want to play anymore. And everybody went nuts. And he went back and changed into his clothes, came back out. And like I said, man, this rock and roll thing is for me. It's like I can't wait to go to another concert. And I've been pretty fortunate to seen a lot of really great shows. Saw the Pink Floyd at the Houston Astrodome before the big breakup and stuff. And
what tour was that?
I don't remember. It was 83, 84, 85, somewhere around there.
What about the Rush show that you saw? What tour was that?
Rush was Signals.
Oh, okay.
It was like 82, 81 or 82.
Yeah.
And Gary Moore opened up.
Oh, that's cool.
But I missed him, and I came in and I sat down at my seat. And we had pretty decent seats, but it wasn't front row. But as soon as the lights went out and that first chord of Spirit of Radio came on, and you always love the music. And like I said, at one time you're listening to a transistor radio through your pillow. Next minute you're listening to headphones, those big gaudy audio ones, like something like the ones you got. And and when you get your first car, you got a decent stereo, but not a great stereo, and it's your sound's cracking and stuff. And you're like, I just wish I had a stereo that rocks like I want to rock. And then you went to the first concert, and like I said, as soon as those lights went out and that first chord of Spirit of Radio came on, I jumped 1,000 feet in the air, and I'm still up there. It's
nice.
like I was like, because it was like the lights, the lights were so awesome, and it was loud, like you want to rock, Yeah. And like all my life, it never mattered to me whether my stereo was the loudest or whatever. Now, you and I know Crazy Dan. Crazy Dan was one of my best friends. He still is. Crazy Dan eats, sleep, drink, and lived for rock and roll, but he had a drinking problem. And I spent many, many days with him over our lifetime together, and he was generally a great person. And when he was drunk, he would go around and high five every single person in the bar or wherever you're at. And he was a lovable drunk, but sometimes he just crossed the thing. But Crazy Dan always was one he had to have the loudest stereo. Like no matter what, his home stereo rocked. Like you could hear it miles and miles and miles down the road. And at one point we decided, you said about thankless job and stuff. And, unfortunately making flyers, you need money. And, if you're going to put out a magazine, you need money.
Yeah. I wouldn't know anything about that.
Right. So what I did was I would have different ways, the merchandising and stuff, and whatever ways that I could come up with cash to pay for it. And at the time with the magazine, you get hundreds and hundreds of CDs. There's no way you could sit there and listen to every single one as much as you would love to. And I would put everything in a box. I would handpick which ones I thought I might enjoy. And then once a month, I would go over Crazy Dan's house, and we'd invite a bunch of music lovers over. We'd order a bunch of pizza, couple kegs of beer, and Crazy had, you know, six disc changer, and we would tell people, okay, go ahead and go through these CDs, and if you see anything that strikes your fancy, give us $3, whatever, you know. So if you want to listen to it, we'll just throw it in the disc changer, and you know. So there's like probably 25, 30 people all at Crazy Dan's place, and he's got it cranked out. Like we're all like in that Energizer thing where we're plastered to the back of the thing. Mm-hmm. But it was so cool. It was like, you know, everybody looked forward to going to the Paul Unger listening party, and they discovered music and bands that they never even knew existed. And that was my goal with the magazine too. It wasn't about whether I said it sucked or whether I said it was great. Everybody had their own opinion of all the different things, and it, you know, whatever music touches your soul, you know, that's the most important thing, is just finding it.
You know, that's a great little one-liner you just said, and I think that we can probably start to wrap it up at that moment, because, you know, a lot of the stories that you've told us today and a lot of the emotional, like very direct, you know, your quotes today, you know, are a reason why you know, I'll say it again, full circle, you wondered why we invited you to come hang out with us today. And I think that you have proven your own, you've answered your own question by just telling us a few stories, and how you ended up wherever you ended up, in the scene, at the concert, in the front row, at Crazy Dan's listening party, in Ryan's horror show parking lot. Selling merchandise for other people, being a broker of rock and roll.
At KISS Unplugged.
Yeah, yawning in the front row.
Watch some of those YouTube videos. You'll see me.
Oh, I think I have that on DVD somewhere.
I do have it on DVD.
I wasn't in the very front row. I was in the front row on the side of the stage, like I'm gonna have to
rewatch it just for that.
What's his name? Eric Singer's side. I was like right there on the front row on the but actually I do have another story if you want, about Alice's Renfield. Alice's long time.
Give us one more.
Okay. So Eric Singer was in Alice Cooper's band.
Yeah, of course.
And the one time I was in California, and I was walking down Sunset Strip, and I was actually wearing a New York Loose shirt for, you know, Bridget West's band. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking down the street, and Eric Singer is walking towards me with some guy, and he's like, "Hey, Paul, what's up?" And the guy that was with him, he says, "So that's a very cool shirt you got on." And I said, "Yeah, you know, you're a fan of New York Loose." And he's like, "I love New York Loose." He's like, I just love New York Loose. And we started talking, and I said, "Well, you know," he said, "Well, what's your name?" And I said, "Paul Unger." He goes, "Oh, I know you." Because he was like you. He always corresponded with all the Alice fans. He absolutely loved, you know, if you were a Sick Thing fan club member, he knew who you were, and he would look you up at the shows and stuff. I just never met him in person. I knew who he was. He knew who I was, and he knew all the shows I was at, but he never really realized, you know. So we started chatting. I said, "I'm Paul Unger." He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I know who you are." I go, "What's your name?" He goes, "Brian Nelson." I go, "Renfield." He's like, "Yeah." So I went to go see New York Loose. They were on Hollywood Records, and at that time, Alice was supposed to be signing on Hollywood, and I had heard this through the grapevine. So I was like, oh, I'm going to contact Hollywood and get in the door. Because at the time I wanted to do an all Alice issue of the magazine. And they said, I got this lady and she was the nicest person. She goes, listen, he hasn't technically signed with Hollywood yet, but when he does, I will hook you up. Only if you hook me up with some of my bands I'm working now. Well, New York Loose was one of them. So the one day she calls me and she says, hey, listen, I need you to go to this concert tomorrow night. I'll overnight you a package and stuff, and I need you to go, and I want you to help pass out flyers and stickers and all this stuff. Sure, no problem. Who am I going to go see? New York Loose. I was like, oh, okay. So next day she sends me this package. I get the CD and I'm listening to it on the way, and I'm like, I really love this music. So I get there and I'm all excited, and I run into the band members minus Bridget at the bar next door, and we're sitting there drinking and having a good old time. And I told them, I said, hey, I'm here. Look, I got your flyers and posters or stickers and stuff. And he was like, oh, that's really cool. And so here it turns out they're opening up for Marilyn Manson on the Antichrist or whatever and it was like one of the first shows of the tour. So it was like, they had the hype hadn't hit yet because they kept it top secret and stuff. So there's like all these goth people walking around, spooky kids, and I'm trying to hand them flyers to New York Loose and stuff, and it was a bit crazy. But then shortly after that, they went on tour with L7, and they came to Pittsburgh, and I went to Pittsburgh and to see them, and I met Bridget and we started talking, and I said, hey, look, I got this network and everything, and I do these mailers. And I gave her a copy of the magazine and stuff. And she's like, well, you got to work for us. Like we would be honored, And she goes, I'm going to put you in touch with this guy that works for us. And I said, okay. And she's writing down the address. And I knew the address. And I knew it. I was like, wait a minute, I know this address. And she goes, it's Brian Nelson. I said, Renfield. And she goes, yes. I go, how the hell you got Renfield running your fan club? And she goes, oh, I love Renfield. And so it was like sort of really cool that, I knew Renfield through Alice, but he and I became friends through New York Loose. And
yeah, he was around, he was still around during Operation Rock and Roll. And
yeah.
I would sometimes see him in the production office or just walking around with Alice, or, he was always working on something. If I was in a green room or in catering or something, I would see him. And I don't recall ever like meeting him, shaking his hand, but he was always there and was always working on something. And he was super passionate.
He was one of those genuinely good people.
Yep.
And he too loved the music.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I didn't even get to tell a dangerous toy story.
Well, you told one.
No. I have a really good one. It was the
disastrous interview question.
Yeah,
you got answered 35 years later.
Now you've lit the fires. Tell us this. Make it a good one.
Okay. So one day I go to, actually it might have been the same night as the interview, but after the show, I told you, I said, I'm going to this music convention in California and I'm going to make up a flyer and I'm going to pass it out and I'm going to put it in my portfolio. And then about a week later, or about a month later, I get a phone call from Mr. McMaster. And he says, dude, I know some people that were there and they got your portfolio. And I think it's badass that you had my flyer in there. And I think ever since then, I think you and I's friendship has gotten stronger because of it.
Wow.
And
so
I held it up
I've been calling it a thankless job, and I made a point to call you and thank you.
Yes, you did.
So now you're on my podcast, me and Dave's podcast, the Talk Louder podcast, and I am thanking you again.
Well, there's you want to thank me, let's get a new Toys album out. And a tour.
This conversation will self-destruct in 5, 4.
And a tour. Not just an album out, we want a tour too.
Well, there has to be...
You have to come to Pittsburgh and Niles,
I was going to say, I know a promoter in Pittsburgh, dude.
You got to put a carrot on a stick. You can't.
Yeah, I know how you work.
It's that. Well, it's
One time you said, "Hey man, $2,000 will get you the toys and the thing," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to save up. I'm going to save up."
That's cheap.
And then like I finally save up. I got the $2,000, and then you're like, "Oh, it's up to $4,000 now." And plus, we don't want to stay at no Motel 6. We have to stay at a fancy hotel. And
that just sounds like inflation to me. That doesn't sound like we don't want to. So.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, I really appreciate how your initial introduction to rock and roll turned into such a fiery passion.
Yes.
That obviously continues to this day. I mean, wow.
Would you call it an addiction?
Would I? I'm not a doctor, but I'd say it's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean that's what I call it. To me, it's.
I think rock and roll. I think rock and roll is very special, and I truly wish that it was as special now as it was then, because I do think that it has declined. And my wife works in the school system, and she says that the kids today, want to be YouTubers or something, and they don't want to work for a living and stuff. And I remember when we grew up, we wanted to rock. That's
Well, and it takes work. You have to work at it. You have to promote yourself. You have to not eat lunch so you can print flyers.
Right.
You have to save your lunch money to buy records. You have to save your lunch money, and some people don't get allowances. I didn't get allowances growing up. So I had to. I would get lunch money, so I wouldn't eat lunch, so I could buy a record on the Saturday after.
Exactly.
I was mowing grass.
All that
and
shit.
shoveling. Well, you guys wouldn't be shoveling snow, but we had, believe it or not, 6 inches of snow like 3 days ago. We had here.
What?
Wow.
6 inches. So I was like, we got to do the podcast out here. It's beautiful out today.
Yeah, you're winning today, Paul. I love you, Paul. Thank
Likewise.
you. Thank you for everything that you've ever done for rock and roll. Not just me or be just.
Well, it starts with the music first.
Yeah.
It starts with the music first. So you provided us with the tunes, and then it's the people that have bonded with your music that's made incites everybody else to do their part.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Paul, thanks for being with us today. It was
likewise
great having you on the podcast.
Thank you.
On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with our special guest today, Mr. Paul Unger on the Talk Louder podcast.
Dream evil, guys.